Hello, boys and girls and moms and dads. We're so happy to have you here at our virtual VBS. My name is Cynthia, and I'll be teaching you today's lesson about some amazing things that Jesus did and some amazing ways that he showed the loving heart of God. So, Jesus often went around to the countryside. He really loved the area by Lake Galilee. And so in this Bible story, he was there teaching people, and they just loved to hear him teach. And he would say things like, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for what is right, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are those who are merciful to others, for they shall have mercy shown to them." And he also said things like, "I am telling you not to worry about your life and what you are to eat, nor about your body and how you are to clothe it. Surely life means more than food, and the body more than clothing. Look at the birds. They do not sow or reap or gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth much more than they? Set your hearts on God's kingdom and on his righteousness, and all these other things will be given unto you. Your heavenly Father knows you need them all." So with teaching like that, and with the times that Jesus would heal people who had terrible illnesses, people who had skin diseases, people who had been born with disabilities like blindness or the inability to use their legs, or problems with their hearing or their speech, Jesus healed them all, and he showed God's love to all of them. And so naturally, lots of people wanted to see Jesus and hear him speak and experience the healing of God that he had to offer. So one day, a large crowd followed him because they were so impressed with these signs and with his teachings. And Jesus had climbed a hillside, and he sat there with his disciples, and he saw the people coming, and he wanted to test his disciples. So he said to one of his disciples named Philip, "Where can we buy some bread for these people to eat?" Now they were in the middle of nowhere. There were no shops, no grocery stores, not even a small market. They were out in the middle of nowhere. Philip looked around, and he kind of threw up his hands. He said, "You know, even if we had 200 denarii, that would only be enough to give each person a tiny bit of bread." And 200 denarii in those days was more than 1/2 year's wages. So if someone worked for half a year and saved all that money and never spent it, then they would have enough to buy a little bit of bread for all those thousands of people. And Philip said, "I just don't see how it can be done." And then Andrew, one of Jesus's other disciples, he's the brother of Simon Peter, he said, "Well, there's a small boy here. He has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but that's hardly enough for all these people." But Jesus knew it was enough. He said to them, "Make the people sit down." There was plenty of grass there, so the people could sit down comfortably. And so they obeyed. They didn't know what was happening, but when the disciples said sit down, the people sat down. Then Jesus took those 5 loaves, he lifted them up to heaven, and he gave thanks to God the Father. And then he gave them out and had his disciples disperse the bread around to everybody. He did the same thing with the fish. He took the 2 fish, raised them up to heaven, and thanked God for them. Then he started passing them out, and his disciples started passing them out. And everyone ate as much as they needed. Everyone was full. Everyone was content from those 5 loaves and 2 fish. And everyone was like, "How can this be? What happened here? how could so little food feed so many? Well, Jesus had used what was handy, and through God's power had made it be enough for everybody. In fact, Jesus looked around and he saw that there were a lot of leftovers. And so he told the disciples, take some baskets, gather up the leftovers. And there were 12 baskets full of leftovers. God had taken a small child's lunch, a small child who was willing to share it, and he made it so that all those thousands of people were fed. It says in the Bible there were 5,000 men, because they often didn't bother to count the women and children, so people estimate it could have been anywhere from 15 to 20,000 people, or even more, that had congregated on the hill, and that Jesus felt such compassion for and caused the miracle where they were fed with the bread and the fish. Now, it's important to know that this also happened around the time of Passover, which was a time when the people remembered, among other things, how God provided for his people in the wilderness when they were leaving Egypt and coming to the land God had for them. And he provided every day with manna, so they always had enough to eat. And so it must have sparked in some of their minds, wow, this is a miracle just like the manna was a miracle. And so they started to put things together in their minds. So after the disciples had filled up those baskets with leftovers, the people started talking and saying, this Jesus is an amazing prophet. What if he were our king? We would never have to worry about food. He would heal us. He would take care of us. He would be an awesome king, and he would probably be able to get rid of the Romans too, because the Romans were not allowing the people to live in freedom. So Jesus knew what they were saying, and he didn't want to be an earthly type of king. He wanted to be the king of their hearts. Even though he preached about a kingdom, it was not a kingdom like the world with a king and a castle and knights and everything that goes with the kingdom that we think about. What he wanted was for people to come into God's kingdom, for God to come and live within their hearts, and for them to be freed from the power of sin and death. So Jesus slipped away, and he did not allow them to make him into their king. He wanted a better thing for them, not just to become a worldly king for them. So how does this apply to us? What can we do sometimes when we see needs in the world? We can be like the disciple Philip and look around and say, wow, I see that problem over there, but I don't have very much money. I couldn't pay to help that problem any. It wouldn't do any good. Or we could be like Andrew and say, well, right here we have a little bit. Maybe God could do something with it. But Jesus knows that he can fill our hearts and help us to impact many people for his kingdom. Let me tell you a story about an experience my family had when we were living in South America. We were missionaries to people who lived and worked on the street. So we had programs to help children who were shoe shiners all day long. We had programs to help people who sold candy all day. And most of these people did not have much of a home. They often slept on the street or in little shacks. But we knew that God loved them and we wanted to help them. So at Christmas time, we wanted to make a special Christmas meal for them. So we decided to have some chicken and rice and potatoes, some salad, and then a nice dessert. So we asked our friends at the church to help us out. And we thought it would probably be about 35 people from the people we had talked to and invited. Well, my husband Mike went down to where the people worked to invite them and bring them to the church. And meanwhile, I was in the kitchen with our friends from the church. We were cooking and cooking. We had plenty of chicken and rice and potatoes for those 35 people. And then we looked up, and as people came in, there were more and more people. 35, 40, 50, 65, 70. We didn't know how many exactly, but there were a lot of people. And so we thought, what are we gonna do? And my friend standing next to me helping fix the chicken said, we've just gotta pray. We've invited these people and God will take care of it. So we stopped and we prayed and we began to make the plates. And we began to cut the pieces of chicken and serve the rice, serve the potatoes, and serve the salad. And guess what? Every single person had a full plate of food. Every single person was satisfied. God did a miracle. It wasn't as many as thousands of people, but it was enough of a miracle to encourage those people who had a difficult life of working on the street, and they received God's love that day. And it also encouraged the workers at the church who hadn't really seen much of a miracle before, and there God was using them in the middle of a miracle to offer this food. And it really encouraged the church there in Bolivia too. So when God does miracles, He wants to bless everyone who's involved, not just the people who are getting the miracle, but the people who are giving it through His power. So I want you to stop and think, what are some ways that God has blessed you? And what are some ways that you can bless others? Because sometimes it's just small things and God will use them to make a big impact on people that you won't even realize. So as you take some time to think about that, I have a little game that you can play. On the website, there's a printout you can print out and play this game with your family. So it's not a one-person game, it's a game for everyone to play and talk about together. So it's a little, sorry, I don't want it to blow away. It's a little bullseye. There we go. Can you see that? And what you do is get a little ball or something to toss at it. Make sure no one's in between it so you don't hit them. And you're gonna think about, how does God show love? And whatever your little ball lands on or hits, because usually it bounces off. You can have a spotter to tell you what it hit. You think about that and talk about that with your family. So I'm gonna do a couple just to show you what I think. So how does God show love? I think that hit through your friends. So how does God show love through your friends? Sometimes He uses them to encourage you when you're feeling down. Sometimes God uses your friends to correct you when they see that maybe you're making some bad decisions in your life. They can gently tell you, hey, that's not right. Sometimes God uses your friends just to make you laugh when you're feeling down. There's lots of ways God can use your friends in your life. And then you can also think about how you can be a good friend to them. Let's see, what am I going to hit next? How does God show love? Well, I'm going to say in my family. So God shows love in my family through, similar to my friends, but even a closer relationship. By giving us joy, by correcting us, by helping us when we're feeling down or going through something difficult. God has given us our families to support us, and we are part of the family to support others. So talk with your family about ways that God has blessed you through them, and that will be an encouragement to your family. All right, so do you get the hang of that? You can just have a great discussion with your family. How has God blessed you, and then how can you bless others in your life? Then when you're done playing the game, it would be cool. You can either individually or as a family get a piece of paper and make a mural. That's a picture with lots of pictures in it to show ways that God has blessed you through others, maybe at school, your friends, your family, or how you have been able to bless other people. And when you're done with that mural, take a picture and have your parents post it on the Holy Cross VBS website. We'd love to see what you make in your mural. God bless you all and help you to be aware of times when He's using you to be a blessing.